What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Tsunade stood at the doorway and watched as Hyuga Hinata calmly stroked Naruto's face, her touch gentle and soft over his eyebrows as she moved his hair out of his eyes. It was the kind of sickeningly sweet moment that made her long for her dead lover's touch, though she was perfectly willing to give it a few more years. She had to make sure Naruto advanced and learned before she could keel over. "Tsunade-sama," Shizune said quietly from beside her mentor. The Anbu are watching all of the council to make sure they don't attempt anything early. "Thank you, Shizune." The two watched the children for a few minutes longer as Hinata sat on Naruto's bed and did nothing more than look at him, taking in his features before Tsunade grabbed Shizune and shunshined to her office. "Hinata-san is going to be so devastated when she learns they banished Naruto-kun," Shizune said quietly, taking a cup of warm sake from the older woman as they both wearily sat at the desk. "From what I understand, she's had an intense crush on him for years." Tsunade closed her eyes and shook before suddenly yelling and throwing the cup at the wall where it shattered. "Damn it, he's only a damn kid. What the hell kind of business do they have telling me to kick out my own ninja?" She roared, falling back into her chair and shaking quietly as her rage was held inside of her. "They gave themselves the additional power by sending you documents to sign while you were drunk," Shizune answered quietly. "You are the one who gave them the authority. You know as well as I do that they're meant to be purely advisory and that their power shouldn't move beyond civilian matters, but they used your drunken habits against you." Both women were glad that they had not yet gone beyond that point to such an extent as to call for his death, however. Some had tried, but all they could do was ask the Hokage for it. And none of them had been willing to grant such a request up to that point. And the council was worried that another opportunity such as this wouldn't come anytime soon, so took as much as they knew they could get away with. Tsunade slumped in her chair and began to cry quietly. "I know," she mourned, crying in a way she hadn't since Naruto saved her life by taking Orochimaru's sword into his belly. "It's my fault for not doing the job properly. But the brat is the whole reason I came back," Tsunade yelled, smacking the desk. "The only reason I'm doing this is because the Gaki said he believed in me. He made me believe in myself. And look at what I've done." She broke down and began to cry harder. "I've failed him. I've failed his dream. I've failed everyone," she finally whispered, thinking about her lost lover, younger brother, Naruto and the Hokage's past. "And now he needs you again," Shizune said calmly, sipping from her sake as Tsunade looked up at her quizzically. "Huh?" she asked rather eloquently, she was sure. "He needs you to help him now, Tsunade-sama. If he's going to be banished, then you may as well do what you can to help him. You know his mission files as well as I do. Sarutobi put him on a huge number of political missions, so he's got powerful friends in Wave, Spring and now Suna who would gladly take him in," Shizune answered, her voice beginning to get louder as her own anger at her mentor grew. Everything that was happening was because the woman didn't do her job properly. Naruto has been at the center of completely changing the course of history and the future of 3 different countries. He's allowed them all to become more prosperous and better places just because of who he is, and you could help guide him to one of those places. He would just simply leave here and possibly wander until he found a place to call his new home and try to live. But most likely, the council is waiting to send out Hunter Nin. See what you can do to help him. Don't just sit there and be sorry for yourself until he is forced to leave. Actually help him." Seeing her mentor flinch, Shizune realized she had gotten into the woman's face and finally sat down, not looking repentant in the least. Naruto had been a wonderful catalyst to get Tsunade to better herself and had even made her own life happier with his existence in it, and had just about filled the younger brother slot in her life. And Tsunade had fallen back into her old ways long enough to ruin it all. Tsunade opened her mouth to say something before closing it and beginning to truly think. She knew what kind of power she held as Hokage. Right after finding out the council had begun stripping her sole execution of it, she checked and found that they had very slowly been granting themselves the ability to control different portions of the ninja force. Worse, it wasn't all of the council, but just the idiots who held the majority, which were mostly civilians who were on a major power trip. They had yet to actually take anything away from her, though. That required far more than they had just by themselves, and they most certainly couldn't do it while she was drunk. It required direct intervention by the daimyo or her own input and offering a defense. And she'd be perfectly willing to show her defense with several well-placed punches, cracking skulls and breaking legs. There's no need to defend against what's dead, after all. Well, usually. And then her thoughts drifted to her own comments spoken only moments ago. She was only here for the brat. Even now, she hated Konoha. More so now that they were destroying the one redeeming quality she had found since leaving over a decade earlier. This town kept trying to kill off everyone who she ever cared about. Shizune, Tsunade began quietly, not sure how her longtime friend would take this idea. She had been willing to follow Tsunade in the past, but that was at a time when her brother had been killed in battle. While not the same, this was very much similar. Would she agree to do it again? Shizune had missed Konoha so much in the previous decade that Tsunade wasn't sure she would be willing to go through it again. I've got an idea, but I'm not sure if you'll like it. I want to know now that, if you don't, you'll forget I ever brought it up. Intrigued, the brunette nodded once. Why are we here? Tsunade asked, deciding to ease her friend into this. What do we have here that we truly care for? That we wouldn't be willing to give up for Naruto? Shizune considered for a moment, her quick mind making several connections to where her shisho wanted to go with this. It was almost scary if she was right. Sacrifice for Naruto-kun? Nothing, she confirmed, already deciding she was all for the plan. Why don't we go with him? Tsunade asked quietly, never knowing who could be listening. You said, help him, and this is certainly the best way I know how. No hunter ninja would stand a chance with us right there beside him, training him, protecting him and keeping him safe. We can't justify ninja going out with him with Konoha on the brink of economical collapse, and we would never know who we could trust. Why don't we go? Protect him? We've got 5 days until Saturday. What can we get from now until then? Shizune asked, hopping on board the Naruto train. No one had really become important to her here except for Naruto, and Tsunade had always been with her wherever she went, and they were the only two she truly cared for. She had begun a relationship with Iruka after learning he was the turning point in Naruto's life and having gotten to know him, but it hadn't worked out. Their very first date had proven that, while they could be great friends, anything more would be impossible. The man was too comfortable and set in his current life where he hoped to settle down soon while Shizune still thrived for action and adventure. And Tsunade would be lost without her within a week. Sanin or not, the woman's skills and abilities had degraded substantially in her decade-long drunken binge. I've already got plenty of plans. Go bring me Hinata. She's directly involved in a few of them, Tsunade ordered, watching in pride as Shizune left without further hesitation, just as any subordinate should. The girl cared for her Naruto? Fine then. By golly, Tsunade would make sure the brat got beamed upside the head with the girl's heart if she had to. The boy deserved love and never got an ounce of it here. It was high time he got stuffed with so much mush and fluff that his great-grandchildren would feel it. The first thing Tsunade realized she had to do was keep Konoha from being able to come after them, so she quickly elevated Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Hinata to Chunin, which the former certainly deserved, and then cut off all duties associated with their families. While Naruto didn't officially have a family, Hinata did, and it was better to do it this way than allow the other Hyuga the chance of coming for the girl. And besides, she could destroy Hinata's paperwork if the girl chose not to follow them. The next thing she did was set out a request for 10 complete sets of long-term gear from the Anbu Black OP's unit, half of Konoha's stored medical supplies since that was about as much as she had them obtain in store when she came back. Enough food for 20 people for a year, which was thankfully already sealed in a storage scroll as a measure in their fallout shelters, which were designed to withstand long-term sieges from enemies, from their storage holds and enough tech for a team of 20, consisting of long-range radios, chakra surveillance equipment and other such materials, all being called out for a rescue mission. Who cared if they thought it was to try and rescue the Uchiha? That just meant they would fulfill it or include things she may have forgotten to add. It was more to rescue Naruto from the council's clutches. But with a constant focus on 20 people, they would think she was taking an actual team for that purpose, just to play it safe and gain less opposition during its acquisition. And there was nothing wrong with having spares for your spares. Especially with Naruto handling the equipment. She then called in a genin team to fulfill an order to buy out an outfitting store for ninja, making careful note that it was for panda bands, the only shinobi store that sold to Naruto without faulty equipment or bloated prices he had told her about. Then she began to write a couple of laws. If Konoha was going to treat her family like shit, she could return the favor. But she was better. She spent most of her life being petty. Shizune waited for several minutes for Hinata to stop kissing Naruto's unconscious lips. She had just been about to enter the room when she noticed the girl straighten quickly before suddenly grabbing Naruto's medical chart, read that he was heavily sedated and then locked lips with the drugged blonde. Boy, was that unexpected. After 4 minutes, and seeing Hinata's hands begin to roam from cupping his face, Shizune called out loudly, "All right. Let me just check Naruto's status," and then walked in, seeing the blushing girl sitting in the chair at the window and a suspicious trail of dust settling between her and the bed. "Enjoy yourself, Hinata?" Shizune asked, unable to help herself after spotting the girl's swollen lips. Immediately feeling bad, she quickly followed it up with, "I like to sit and comfort the patients, too." "Why yes. Co-comfort the pen is. Is Naruto-kun going to be okay?" Hinata asked, mortified. The one time, she gathered the courage to kiss her love, and she couldn't stop thinking about it. It just popped into her head. What if a kiss like the fairy tales could wake him up? So, she tried, hoping for one of those happily ever after endings. They got married in those endings. And married people got to do the naughty. Instead, she nearly got caught doing something she wasn't sure was illegal or not. Was it against the law to kiss an unconscious boy until you needed air? She knew it was if you knocked them unconscious first. She had had that idea twice before and looked into it. But he was already unconscious this time. No tranquilizer darts, no knockout gases and no jukin to the spine. This time, it wasn't her fault. He will be, yes, but I'm just checking on Naruto-kun's status, and then I'm actually supposed to take you to meet Tsunade-sama. Hinata asked, blushing and wondering if she got caught. Is this because Naruto-kun failed to catch Uchiha-san? She knew it couldn't be. She wouldn't be the one Tsunade wanted to talk to. But, other than molesting her love, she couldn't think of anything else Tsunade would want with her. Well, nothing she already did. They couldn't read minds, because they weren't Yamanaka, so she had nothing to worry about as to where she had planned on putting them. In part, yes, Shizune said quietly, checking Naruto's wounds and finding that the fox was mending him up with incredible speed. The wound on his chest was the only one that wasn't almost fully healed, it seemed. The fox was getting much faster. The chakra coursing through his body even seemed to overlay over the chakra of her diagnostics jutsu and then began to do the same technique over the rest of his body as if it was learning. It was a shame Shizune wasn't checking on the chakra, or that would have worried her. Hinata visibly straightened, wondering how she could be of assistance to the Hokage. I am ready. Shizune nodded and grasped Hinata firmly by the shoulder, sunshining them to the entrance to the Hokage's office. Nodding at the two Anbu guards, Shizune opened the door, watching Tsunade quickly hide a parchment in her lap and look at the newcomers innocently. The Hokage didn't have Naruto's game face, and Shizune had seen her poker faces for years. The Sannin was up to something. Narrowing her eyes, Shizune introduced the girl. Hyuga Hinata is here to see you, Hokage-sama. Tsunade smiled and quickly motioned for Hinata to sit in the chair in front of her. Without waiting, Tsunade opened Hinata's file and read out loud for the benefit of the girl as Shizune began to activate the silencing seals of the room. Hyuga Hinata, age 13. According to this, you've got excellent chakra control, but are pretty much average in everything else, though you dabble in medical arts as self-taught. You have no ninjutsu or genjutsu knowledge aside from what the academy teaches, even though your sensei is a genjutsu specialist and should have taught you some in over half a year, and your weapons and taijutsu are about average as well, excluding the edge the jukin provides in close combat. Sound about right? Tsunade asked, getting an embarrassed and disappointed nod. The girl knew her family expected much better from her. Good. Now, I'm going to be blunt as hell, because I've had one really screwed up day and don't want to deal with taking my time trying to be delicate. Savvy? Confused, and looking more than a little shocked at the Hokage's pirate language, Hinata nodded, wondering how much sake the woman had that day, so far. Good. Now, because Naruto failed to bring back Sasuke, the village council is prepping to have him banished, she explained, watching as all color drained from the Hyuga maiden's face. Now, here's the kicker. I'm planning on joining him, along with Shizune-chan there. It's pretty public knowledge that you have a crush on Naruto, so I'm willing to help you get him and take you on as an apprentice if you come with us. So what about it? Do you want in? Ayya. Hinata spoke unintelligibly for a few seconds before Tsunade realized she had come on a little strong and tried again. The only reason I came to this village was because the Gaki made me believe in it. Believe in him, Tsunade explained quietly and warmly, showing the girl she was being honest and sincere. Now, they want to get rid of him. Well, I'm not going to sit and take it. He means more to me than this dump. I'm willing to promote you to Chunin so you can be taken from your team and take you on as an apprentice. You'll learn all of my techniques and then some. It means leaving your village, your family and your friends, but I can make sure we're not labeled as missing nin or traitors and will be well provided for. What do you say? Hinata took only a second to nod, knowing she would lose her family and team, but really, she didn't feel very close to her family. They all hated her, the branch family for being a main member and the main branch for not being the best. That happened when a handful of people had an "obey or die" seal on the foreheads of the branch members. And she knew some of the men from the main branch used it on the women of the branch side for their own perversions, knowing there was nothing they could do. If they knew they could get away with it, and Hyuga babies had to come from somewhere, many of the main branch felt the cadet branch should be honored to be given the more noble seed of the ruling branch. That was one of the reasons she wanted to abolish the caged bird seal. It was also one reason she worried so much for her sister, and knew she was consigning herself to such a fate by letting Hanabi take her place as heiress of the Hyuga clan. She would miss her team, but was willing to leave with Naruto-kun. It meant too much not to. If it means making sure Naruto-kun is okay, I'd be happy to accept. Tsunade smiled. That a girl? Now, we need— She stopped immediately as Ino, Shikamaru and Shino entered the room. Can I help you three? Tsunade asked, piercing Shizune with a glare for letting them be interrupted. You needed an emergency team of genin for a mission, Shikamaru explained, and I needed something to keep my mind off of things. Ino trailed along and Shino was feeling pretty useless sitting in the hospital and offered to join me when I was told to find 2 people and report to you since we were in the same room. Oh, right, my mission, Tsunade mumbled, looking for the paper she had written the directions out on. There's the little bugger, she cried out triumphantly, holding up a wad of what looked like garbage. Take this to Panda Bands and tell the clerk to seal everything he's got into scrolls. 1 for each weapon and 1 for each of literally everything he's got. Clothes, weapons, explosive notes and all. I even want the shelves everything comes on. Tell him to charge the Hokage's account, do you understand me? Bug-eyed, Ino and Shikamaru nodded as Shino looked between the Hokage, Hinata and back again, his mind calculating possibilities. Hokage-sama, we can't seal, Ino warned, looking at the wadded-up paper in surprise. Still. That's why I told you to have the clerk do it, now be back as soon as possible. Quickly, all 3 genin left. They could hear Ino questioning the mission almost immediately. Now that they're gone, Tsunade continued, looking at Hinata. We're leaving on Friday, so we've got 4 days. I need you to think of anything you may want or need to bring. I'm taking care of shinobi equipment and medical supplies, but I want you to pack any clothes you have without the Hyuga emblem, any mementos, copy or steal any jutsu scrolls you've got at your estate and anything you can think of to bring in that we may forget. We're taking care of food, weapons, mission gear and the majority of the jutsu you will be learning. Do you think you can do this? Tsunade asked. The Hokage wasn't too worried about the girl's father stopping her. He had not been one of the ones who were a part of the council's manipulations. Granted, that could most likely be attributed to the fact that doing so would only have taken more power from him, so the majority of the council, which were civilians, didn't call in any of the shinobi families. Tsunade would have to see about making sure they couldn't pass laws without the full council present. It had been something that Konoha was hoping to do that kept them from having such a horrible history as many other villages. Having a civilian council was supposed to allow them the chance to bring up matters that meant something to the people and get them handled, while still being a village run by, and taking orders from, their Hokage. The entirety of the village was purely a military structure, and all militaries had their leader. The council was made up of both civilians and heads of the ninja clans, however, to ensure that some form of decorum and stability was held up and to ensure that they didn't focus on civilians more than the ninja clans, who were much like civilians themselves while not actually on any missions. Ninja were people, too. Tools, yes, but people as well. But the council was headed by a few retired ninja who lived well beyond their prime in the field and hated feeling useless, deciding they didn't have enough power any longer. So, they worked with the civilians, slowly and privately, until Tsunade came along and they had the perfect patsy to allow them to slip new laws into place that granted them more power. And when Tsunade could barely see straight because of her hangover, they slipped in small and minor things, granting themselves that power, authorized by a hazy Hokage. Moving as slowly as they dared and in very small increments, they worked their way up until they could grant or take away anyone's ninja status under Konoha's authority, send out hunter nin to find and kill any missing ninja and assign ninja to tasks of their own design that didn't take away from their duties to the village under the Hokage or circumvent the Hokage's orders, though they still couldn't go against the Hokage's own orders in any way. But she couldn't go against theirs as long as they followed their own rules. The magic of writing such laws was all in the wording and emphasizing some things while playing down others, a game politicians have been playing for as long as there was a structured government. The last of their abilities was to appease the civilians and make them believe they were gaining some form of control over the ninja, but in fact, it was so Danzo could recreate his militia group of Anbu, called Root, which were codenamed Nei. They were Anbu that were next to brainwashed into being fanatically loyal to the deformed, ex-ninja, and had originally been forced to disband when Sarutobi, the third Hokage, had taken office. Now, he could bring them back, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop him. By using various civilians and training them up himself, they had no allegiances to Konoha or the Hokage, which meant their sole leader was himself, which made them exempt from the majority of their own limitations. Let the civilians have their petty issues get taken care of. Danzo had his own army, and it was growing. Hinata nodded, thinking about Naruto's need for chakra control more than anything, but debating with herself if the Hyuga's stolen archive of goodies could help him as well. With eyes that could see through anything, no one could keep scrolls secret except for some of the more paranoid defenders. Even the Uchiha were prey to the Hyuga eyes. You can't defend against what you can't see. I can gather plenty of materials, Tsunade-sama. Will we meet before Friday? And where do we meet that day? Hinata asked, finding herself looking forward to this new experience. Not only would she be with her Naruto-kun, but she was going to be apprenticed to Tsunade. We'll meet every day, actually, and we're going to meet here Thursday night. Now that I think about it, Tsunade said, deciding to use the cover of night 2 days early to get farther without being seen, just to be sure. She knew they would expect her to remain out of the way the last day, using every final moment in attempts to rebuke their decision. We'll all go to dinner, say it's a goodbye meal, and then part ways, meet back here an hour later and then take off. Shizune had been playing scenarios in her mind and decided to interject while the conversation paused slightly. Hinata, you may also want to gather any and all Hyuga-based technique scrolls you can get your hands on, possibly copy them so no one knows they're missing. You won't have the chance to learn from another Hyuga anytime soon, and we don't want your unique abilities to stagnate or be lost. Good idea, Tsunade mumbled, deciding that really would be a problem for everyone. Then, another concept came to mind. Namely, techniques to teach Naruto that weren't purely medical. His chakra control wouldn't be good enough to handle those techniques for some time. Also, there was the situation with the Kyuubi. Would that affect her decision? Hinata, there's a secret about Naruto that you need to know before you commit to joining our group, Tsunade warned, sighing. Naruto really should be the one to tell you this, but we have neither the time to wait, or for you to change your mind later because of it. You see, when Naruto was born, he was chosen to carry a unique burden. I already know about the Kyuubi, Hinata whispered, catching both women in shock. All Hyuga who leave the estate grounds know about it, and my father told me about it when I joined Naruto-kun's class. He warned me never to tell anyone because it would be considered treason because of a law that was in place and that I would die. But he had T2 because I would have questioned why there was red chakra in his C circulatory system. Tsunade's initial anger abated some as the rationale was explained, but she still didn't like it. Wait, and you still like the brat? She asked, wondering if this meant that Hyuga Neji knew about it also. From what she had heard, the boy seemed surprised when Naruto used the power during the Chunin exams against him. Naruto-kun is Naruto-kun. Hinata whispered quietly, sending the older woman a slightly scathing look for doubting her. I have watched him for a very long time. He is not mean or evil. Tsunade decided there and then she was going to make sure those two ended up together. Even if she had to go to extremes to make it happen. And she planned to. It never hurt to be sure. Great, let's go talk to the brat. He's going to need all the friends he can get. Tsunade would admit she was upset over the whole thing, but honestly saw this as an excellent opportunity for Naruto. He could leave the village and grow in an environment where he wasn't shunned and loathed because people knew who he was and what he carried. She was already thinking up a speech to give him about how this was more of a blessing in disguise. She wasn't sure if he would believe it, but there was hoping. He was pretty dense, after all. And she planned on working the two hard enough to get together that he wouldn't have time to feel sorry for himself. Tsunade, Shizune and Hinata huddled around Naruto's bed while the white-eyed girl kept an eye out with her Byakugan to make sure they wouldn't be disturbed as Tsunade removed the sedatives from Naruto's body just as if it were poison, causing the boy to groan. MN. Sasuke Teme. Stop being a yaoi fanboy, he mumbled as he swiped invisible hands from his crotch, much to the older women's amusement and the younger girl's dismay. The Uchiha had tried to snag her Naruto-kun? Murder. A tiny Hinata screamed inside of her own head, cute pixie nose scrunching as she scowled. Wake up, Naruto, Tsunade said, shaking Naruto's shoulder. The boy roused slowly, and not a bit grumpily. Ba-chan? Why bring me ramen? He mumbled, yawning. Tsunade rolled her eyes before suddenly throwing her hands up in the air and leaning down to put her face mere inches from his own and screamed, scaring the boy badly enough to make him and the other two girls scream in fright. Now that I've got your attention, we need to talk. But first, Hinata-chan, here, is going to tell you a secret. Hinata's head poked out from behind Shizune where she had taken refuge when Tsunade went spooky and stared at her new shisho in abject horror. That wasn't part of the plan. Tsunade grunted and jerked her thumb to the very confused blonde on the bed. Either tell him or you don't join us. Tsunade saw Hinata was staring between her and Naruto, so she grabbed Hinata by the upper arm and dragged her over to the bed, red face, poking fingers and all. Hinata's eyes darted between Naruto and Tsunade several times. Then her eyes rolled into the back of her head and Hinata passed out. Well, that's going to make confessing a little hard, Tsunade grumbled, picking the girl up and setting her on the bed next to Naruto. What's this all about, Ba-chan? Naruto asked, looking over his body and seeing that he was nearly fully healed. His chest was tight and ached, but the hole was already closed. And how long have I been out? Tsunade forgave him for the old comment, but decided to answer his second question first. So far, you've been here overnight. Kakashi brought you in after he found you at the Valley of the End. Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked in shock. It was rather surprising, really. The man had given him a fruit basket once, but other than that, he hadn't really ever done anything for Naruto. The blonde-haired youth would have honestly expected to him have gone after Sasuke and try to catch him. It was obvious they were in a huge battle and the boy would be moving slowly. Wait, how did he even find us? I thought he was out of Konoha on missions. And how did I heal that overnight? It took days the last time I had a hole in my chest. He was on his way back and felt your chakra signatures and knew you were fighting after the gate guards explained the situation when he arrived. She told him, making a point to ignore that he admitted to having a hole in his chest before. But she made a mental note to find out how it happened and when, just in case she had a Junin to castrate. There would be a trip to the hospital records office before leaving on the agenda. Oh, Naruto said simply. Anyway, we're here to talk about some pretty serious stuff, Naruto, Tsunade said warmly, sitting on a chair at the edge of the bed. Now that the amusement with her new pet project, currently laying next to Naruto, was aside, Tsunade took on the somber tone that was appropriate. Naruto, I'm about as useful with words as you are, so I'm just going to tell you straight out. I screwed up, she admitted. Her eyes began to tear up as she continued. I didn't take the job seriously and now the council gave themselves more power because of me and they're banishing you from Konoha. Naruto's face paled and he suddenly felt a horrible stabbing pain in his chest that had nothing to do with his wounds. They're kicking me out? I know they always hated me, but, he trailed off as tears began to fall from his eyes. Tsunade enveloped him into a hug, cuddling his head to her shoulder. I know it hurts, but Shizune, Hinata and I are coming with you. We're not letting them kick out. The only reason we came back, and the situation is beneficial for Hinata as well, Tsunade said, not mentioning how it was going to help the girl. He didn't need to know about slavery, rape, seals and her crappy family life for now. She'd make sure Hinata confessed, though. That would help him a little, she was sure. What? Naruto asked, looking at the older woman hopefully. He wasn't going to be alone again? Naruto-kun, Shizune said from the side, coming closer and touching his face tenderly, we love you. You mean more to us, all of us, than Konoha. A village is nothing but the people who live within its boundaries. We came to care for you and came here to help you. If they're getting rid of you, then they're getting rid of us. As horrible as Naruto felt, he couldn't help but to smile a goofy grin. It was very comforting to know that at least someone cared for him. It actually made it worth the pain he was feeling. Well, perhaps not, but it put it in an odd sort of equilibrium, making him feel somewhat detached from the experience of leaving the village he grew up in and unwillingly focusing solely on the people that cared enough to leave with him. Then the warm body of Hinata glomped his side and stayed firmly attached like a cuddly teddy bear, making Naruto wonder why she was coming. Tsunade and Shizune he could understand, but the Hyuga heiress? What's Hinata-chan doing going with us? She has a family and she'd be giving that up, he finished quietly. Tsunade frowned, looking at the happy expression on the sleepy Hyuga. The question gave her another idea, but it would have to wait. That is a conversation you'll need to have with her, Naruto. But I'm going to have her tell you her secrets. I'm sure you can understand not telling someone another person's secrets? She asked, conveniently ignoring the fact that she had just done that earlier with Hinata and ignoring Shizune's disapproving glare. Naruto flinched, looking down at the girl resting her head in his lap. Yes, he could understand that. Naruto, when she wakes up, I want the two of you to spend the rest of the day talking. Neither of you are allowed to leave this room until you both tell each other your secrets. You have one, she has one. Tell her I said that she has to tell you the secret I told her to tell before she fell asleep. Otherwise, she doesn't get to come with us, Tsunade ordered. Also, don't worry about equipment or anything. Shizune and I are taking care of everything we would need unless you want to get anything from your apartment. Understand? Naruto looked down at Hinata and then back up to Tsunade, his expression unreadable. Do I have to? He asked quietly. I mean, what if she hates me for it? I'll give you a hint, Naruto, Tsunade said with a smirk, making Naruto quirk an eyebrow. Those eyes can see the difference between your chakra and that of the furball. She hasn't brought it up or asked questions about it, has she? Naruto shook his head, watching the sleeping girl and thinking about everything that phrase would mean or could have meant. What it could mean. Tsunade got up and moved her chair against the wall with a small smile. We'll be going to dinner together on Thursday night and then leaving later that evening, even though we don't officially have to leave until Saturday since we didn't expect you to heal well enough to move until then. You seem to have healed even faster than you normally do. But I want to be out of here well before they get it in their heads to try anything, so you have to stay in bed and pretend to be weak if anyone shows up, or they could try to do it faster. Naruto sighed and watched the two women quietly leave. He stared at the closed door for several long moments before a sleepy and roaming hand began creeping down his chest. Then his stomach, then. Hinata, get you the what? Shizune asked with wide eyes. Tsunade couldn't be thinking that. She wouldn't. I said, get me the forms to form an arranged marriage between my ninja, Tsunade repeated. It was a tactic that was needed with surprising frequency when such things had to be truly done to avoid detection from spy networks that were better than they would expect, and, as Hokage, she had all-powerful control of marrying any of her ninja at any time to anyone she chose, legally and just as binding as any other marriage. And it was real and official, too. When the paperwork was filed, it truly married the ninja, even without the vows needing to be spoken. Tsunade-sama, you can't marry the two of them before. No, Tsunade interrupted the voice of reason, quickly making up a plausible story. I'm just setting it up to make sure no one else can do so with Hinata or Naruto. Otherwise, the Hyuga or the council could initiate an arranged marriage and force us to return them. Already having one in the books, ordered by the Hokage, means no one else has that ability. Actually, they could still try, as all it would normally take was another Hokage voiding the contract other than either of the two of them, so she actually would be marrying them as soon as possible, but didn't want to get into an argument for now. Especially when she would be breaking off all allegiances with Konoha, meaning it was ironclad. The Hokage couldn't break a marriage to someone who wasn't under their authority. But they couldn't marry one not under their authority either, so it was now or never. The Hokage sat at her desk and pulled out a few bits of parchment as she continued to explain. I'm not bothering to ask Hieshi's permission for this, and he's already commented that he's only waiting to put Hinata into the branch family until Hanabi is of traditional age or she dies. We already know the branch members are treated badly at best. This saves her from everything we know happens to them. Tsunade grinned ferally, causing Shizune to shudder as she handed the paperwork over. And if those two get together, then we have the legal paperwork all finished to give them the ability to marry at any time without needing to get parental permission. We never know when we'll need them to have that ability. They're children, Shizune spluttered. What on earth could we need them to be married for? At least with insertion and undercover missions, I can understand, but they'll be with us the whole time. Tsunade frowned as she was pulled from writing various legal measures and putting Hinata and Naruto into an arranged marriage that they could only break themselves, just to be on the safe side. Well, being married will keep anyone else from trying the same with either of them. We know Kumo would go after Hinata being both unsealed and in a small party since we don't know where we'll be and could come across some of them. And once it comes out that Naruto is the son of the Yondaime Hokage, which I'm sure will come out soon, and that we're taking off with Naruto's inheritance, which everyone knows contains jutsu scrolls, people are going to be trying to get Naruto in hopes of some of the Minato's personal techniques. Especially Iwa. We won't be able to keep the council from leaking that information and hoping for Iwa to finish him off rather than get their own hands dirty. And, with both being who they are, a political marriage would only be expected, even at such a young age. Shizune scowled at her mentor. All the more reason to train him. Tsunade waved off Shizune's worry. We'll head for the daimyo's palace first, explain what's happening and what measures we're taking. That'll make sure the idiots here can't send him false information and get us in worse trouble from a higher power than the bastards in the council. I didn't think they knew about Naruto's lineage, Shizune said, finally responding to what she heard rather than by her dislike of marrying Naruto off already. She was all for it happening, but would have rather they discussed it with him first. They didn't until after the Kyuubi was sealed, Tsunade grunted. They wanted to kill Naruto right after and Sarutobi had to explain everything in order to make them back down since even the ninja portion thought that was what was meant to happen. It still only worked on a few of the ninja clans, most of which trusted the Yondaime's sealing abilities, but it gave him a valid reason to tell them off and keep him alive. I had to break open the Hokage's safe since Sarutobi didn't bother leaving the combination anywhere. It had Naruto's inheritance, an autographed collection of Icha-Icha, his diary of important notes and stuff like Black Ops information and the Forbidden Scroll. Best idea, ever, Tsunade thought as she realized who exactly the genius was that made the Forbidden Scroll. Originally, it was all on various scrolls throughout the Hokage's archive, and still was, but was put together by Minato right after becoming Yondaime so it was more organized and all available from one quick source, whether for reference or so they could firebomb the original archive and have the backup handy. That meant it technically belonged to him and not Konoha. That meant she had a justification for bequeathing it to Naruto. Tsunade cackled as she realized she was Hokage. It didn't even matter if it was his by right, because it was hers by right. And there were a lot of jutsu that had been stolen over the decades by Konoha, either from enemies or from clans that died out like the Uchiha. Sarutobi knew it was too dangerous to leave that extremely vast library of jutsu that the Uchiha had stolen from their original country before being kicked out in the abandoned Uchiha district. Even with various Anbu patrols, it would have been child's play to get past them. Naruto did it all the time even before getting halfway through the academy. It was simply safer to keep it locked in their vaults until Sasuke would be able to claim it. Well, he was a traitor, so he didn't have right to anything in Konoha at that point. He turned his back on them and everything there. And even better, it was fully within a Hokage's right to grant property under their care to someone. They did it for the Uchiha and Hyuga when starting the village, after all. Even the Forest of Death was originally going to be for a clan that decided not to accept their offer. As acting Hokage, and with a creepy giggle, she claimed all Uchiha estates and properties as belonging to Konoha, and then gave it all to Naruto so that he could start over a new life somewhere else. So what if all he could take were things that could be moved around? With sealing scrolls, it didn't matter. All of the scrolls, the money and random items within the property could be sealed up and either sold if needed or used later. While nothing could be done for the property or what was in it for now, they were perfectly able to transfer all money and scrolls into Naruto's possession, minus a portion of the Uchiha's bank account to those others who went on the mission to retrieve him. As Tsunade cackled in frenzied glee, Shizune read each document, just making sure everything was accurate of course, and became increasingly shocked at her mentor and friend's audacity. She was literally giving away all of Konoha's jutsu and a good deal of its money to Naruto. There wouldn't be a village in existence that would deny them entry. Do you see the rotations? Naruto asked as his clone brought his hands away from the Rasengan it had just helped create in Naruto's hand and disappeared while Hinata watched in fascination with her Byakugan active. The swirling, spiraling ball of chakra was beautiful and mesmerizing to look at without her clan's eyes, but with them, she saw in a whole different level. For a pair of eyes that allowed the user to see everywhere at once and for great distance, looking into the center of the spiral made her feel like its depths were endless. She knew it couldn't be, but the very center seemed to never end. It was like something was there that made the center go somewhere else. Yes, Naruto-kun, Hinata whispered, feeling as though speaking more loudly would break some magical barrier that she didn't want broken. It would remove the incredible sight from her if it did. She knew it. When she had woken up to Naruto's terrified yelp of her name, her hand had been halfway under his hospital gown and the girl had leapt away almost as quickly as Naruto had. Thankfully, the boy's nature led him to believe she was dreaming about catching something or other and had brushed it aside, even if he hadn't forgotten it, and the two began to talk with Naruto explaining Tsunade's parting message. Knowing what was at stake, and that she had time, Hinata didn't faint again, but simply took a deep breath and then squeaked out, "I like you." Naruto simply smiled and said he liked her, too, completely missing the girl's meaning. Hinata had been so annoyed that she finally managed to say the words and he misunderstood that she didn't even realize she had corrected him until he asked her outright to confirm and be sure he hadn't heard wrong or misunderstood. After she had reawakened, he admitted she was among the few he really had on his good list, that he never really had a bad thing he could say about her. She needed a little more confidence, but he knew she would get that at some point. Girls were weird, after all. They couldn't be expected to be the same as him. Now, he was trying to teach her the basics of the Rasengan after discussing Jiraiya, who Naruto admitted to liking better than Kakashi since Kakashi only ever taught him tree walking and Jiraiya had taught him water walking, the Rasengan and how to summon toads. And that was in only 2 months. Imagine what he could have done if he had been Naruto's teacher. Do you want to try and make it? There are 3 stages, but the part 1 had the hardest with was chakra control, which I know you're much better at. I don't think I could put that much chakra into it, she said quietly. Sure, she had that much, but putting it all into one technique? She had never tried before. The requirements for this one technique were incredible and would almost fully deplete her own reserves. Well, Naruto said, thinking, why don't I give you the chakra and you can do the control? All you have to do is swirl it in a bunch of different directions at once and it works with me and my clone. Hinata blinked. That was actually an interesting idea. And she got to play with Naruto's chakra. Alright. Hesitantly, she crawled into the bed beside him and cupped her hands over Naruto-kun's and watched his chakra with her Byakugan, beginning to swirl more and more chakra as he added it between their hands. It was incredible. His chakra was warming the air and literally seemed to hum to her senses. And the power. It was easy enough to control what he gave her to work with, which she found very surprising, actually. It was an odd experience to have so much power at her fingertips that she knew she could manipulate as she willed. The red chakra seemed to caress her hands, oddly enough, but it seemed to recognize what was happening and was providing some kind of shell. It was hard to tell what it was doing, but moments after beginning, it seemed to take heed of what was happening and kept all of the blue chakra constrained. Remembering what she saw before, she began to swirl the mass of raw energy between their hands and saw as the glob of chakra began to form more spherical until she had something that looked the same on the outside, but she knew it wasn't. Complete was the word she thought she needed. I have it acting a lot like yours, but it isn't complete, she said, unsure of what was missing or wrong. Yours had something different in the center. Something I can't seem to replicate. Naruto grinned, taking control back and letting the energy dissipate gently around them. Yay, that was the third stage. You had exactly what I spent a week on before I figured it out. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I can try to teach you if you want. I'd like to know how the hell you were able to let your chakra follow Hinata's commands. Both teens turned to see Tsunade and Shizune standing in the doorway, looking surprised. Heya Ba-chan. Naruto waved as Hinata blushed and got off of his bed to sit on the chair again where no one could accuse her of anything. She still wasn't sure what Shizune had seen earlier. What do you mean? My clones control my chakra all the time when I do the Rasengan. The two older women entered the room and closed the door behind them as Tsunade took the chair on the other side of the bed from Hinata while Shizune was juggling various scrolls and reading the newest measures through to ensure everything was properly worded so as not to come back to bite them on their well-trained butts. She had only found one such error so far, but it would have been a horrible one for their plans if not caught, and she was now frantically searching for others while Tsunade continued to explain. Chakra is a part of us, Naruto. It's controlled by both our conscious and subconscious minds. That's why someone can't control another person's chakra whenever they want to. Subconsciously, we don't ever want to lose control over that energy, meaning giving it to someone else. That's why we can't recharge our own reserves with another person's chakra, too. It has to be freely given. Your clones are basically you, so it's normal that they might, though I don't know if I've ever seen anyone try. Simply put, the spiritual part of chakra makes it have a kind of personality to act similarly to its owners. No one wants to be controlled, and neither will their chakra. Outside of the room, Ino stopped from entering the room with her hand on the doorknob as she heard the Hokage speak, a flower in her hand where she was hoping to wish Naruto a get well. It had spread all around town about the battles everyone had fought, and Kakashi had explained much of the battle scene of the Valley of the End in public while answering some of the medics' questions, his experienced eyes taking in and reading the signs of the battle to get an idea of how everything had occurred, so people could guess at how intense that one was. And Shino's bugs had apparently been on everyone so he could report anything needed in case they either died or needed help, and the one on Naruto had spoken about an incredible battle that had been replayed in Shino's mind from the insect's memory. What he described was awe-inspiring and frightening in such a way that, if it was anyone other than Shino telling the story or anyone other than Naruto and Sasuke doing the fighting, she probably wouldn't have believed it. But the Aburame were not the type to be known for lying, and those two boys were the only ones who seemed to have such incredible histories already. And it was well known that the Aburame planted such bugs on their party members for a number of reasons. Especially in search and retrieval where they may have to find a wayward member of the team. So, she had been there as much for verification, hoping Naruto would let her peek into his memories to watch from his perspective as much to wish him good health. He was one of them, after all. Naruto looked at Tsunade like she was crazy and then to Hinata before going back to Tsunade. I don't mind if I give Hinata-chan my chakra. She was only making the rotations of the Rasengan. I just pushed the energy out like I do with my clones and let her move it about. Tsunade was about to continue to argue before shaking her head, deciding it wasn't worth it and she would have plenty of time to work on it later. It wasn't that it was impossible, she knew, but that it was a matter of trust. That's why clones could do it. They simply were their creators. Nothing to fear there. She was surprised because Hinata was able to control his chakra. If Naruto was that blindly trusting, she would have to make sure to work it out of him. And odder than anything else, she had never worked with the Kyuubi's chakra, so that should have fought her tooth and nail for control. Naruto could do it because he's done it his entire life. Well, regardless, we're just coming by to make sure the two of you have talked, Tsunade said, looking at Hinata's blushing face, who nodded, and Naruto's pale one, which began looking for an escape route. She took that as a, no. You need to tell her, Naruto. If you don't, she'll stay here and the council is most likely going to tell everyone anyway. And you know they'll put it in a bad light just for backing from the people to support their decision. He didn't, actually, but she wasn't aware of just how little Sarutobi had hidden of the attempts to have him killed in the past. Naruto looked at Tsunade and Shizune for several long moments before gazing back at Hinata. He had enjoyed the last few hours, but knew it was going to come to an end now. And she liked him, too. Liked him, that is. While the idea scared him a little, he found himself also hoping to try and explore that concept, which had been severely lacking in his life. Hinata-chan, there's something about me that only the adults know about, he began, not seeing Tsunade hold up a hand to stop Hinata from interrupting him that she already knew. Tsunade wanted Naruto to learn to tell his secret, and he couldn't do that as easily until he learned to for the first time. Especially if the first time was to someone who supported him, just to make it that much more worthwhile afterwards. When I was born, it was the night of the Kyuubi attack. And, the Yondaime didn't know how to actually kill the fox, so he used his knowledge about seals to just make it go away. But, to do that, he needed to seal it into something. Apparently, something with its own chakra can't be sealed into something without its own chakra because it will break free, so it had to be something that was alive, but it had to be something with a chakra system just as complex, a human in this case. But, if that much chakra went into someone that already had a developed chakra circulatory system, it would only shatter it, so it had to be a baby without a chakra system of its own already. The younger, the better. Since I was just born, he actually sealed it into me. Naruto looked away, not sure he could handle whatever he would see on Hinata's face. I'm still me, but the bastard fox is inside of my belly, behind my belly button. I've actually talked to it. He's a bastard, Naruto grumbled, thinking about the fox's desire to eat him. Outside, Ino quietly gasped in surprise. She, like everyone else, knew how badly Naruto was treated just by being near the boy when he was out in public, but she had always thought it was his reputation as a prankster. Not because of that. Hinata looked to Tsunade, getting a nod to let her know she could say something, and then looked back at Naruto. I know, she said simply, watching Naruto look at her in shock. I can see its chakra inside of you with my eyes. My father told me about it long ago so I wouldn't ask Q questions about it and bring it up in class because of a law that exists where anyone who talks about the Kyuubi openly or to anyone who doesn't know is to be charged with treason and killed. I've seen you grow, Naruto-kun. You aren't mean or evil. She trailed off, blushing brightly before she admitted to more than she wanted to. You are kind and generous, always giving of yourself. You always try to help and you never give up. You protect this village with everything you have, even stopping Gaara when the demon sealed within him took over. I can see all of that, and I've seen you. I know you are not demon. I can see you are you. Those eyes were great for spying, or stalking, or peeping. She preferred everything went under the first category, though. Still outside, Ino slowly withdrew her hand from the knob of the door and swallowed. Hinata was right, of course. Ino tried looking back to see where Naruto had ever done something mean or evil and, aside from some iffy pranks, he was always a good guy. And, looking back at how often the teachers used to pick on him in class, which she had also always thought was for pranking, she realized how much that had to have hurt his education and how badly Naruto could have turned out. She, like many others, had received information on who Subaku no Gaara was from their Junin after getting the invasion explained to them, and she realized that, if Naruto had turned out like that, there would have been no telling who may have died. Or more precisely, who could have lived. That would require a lot of thought, Ino was sure. Happy to have the depressing stuff out of the way, Tsunade clapped her hands together sharply, making the other three occupants jump. Poor Shizune almost dropped the papers she was checking over so diligently. Okay, now, I've already got everything in my possession that we're going to take except for the Uchiha's finances and the like, and Hinata here should be getting her clan's techniques for our trip so she can study them. We're taking the Tamiz money? Naruto asked with a shocked expression on his face before it broke out into a grin. That's awesome. Then he fell back laughing. That's the best prank ever. A part of Naruto knew stealing was wrong and that it wasn't truly a prank, but the other, much larger, part of him that had almost been killed by the bastard had no qualms in taking off with the loot. Tsunade grinned evilly right back at him. Well, technically, I took it as my right against traitors as Hokage and transferred it all to you, including his family's jutsu library and his property. Well, along with a portion of the money to the others who went on the retrieval mission as well, of course. Naruto stopped laughing and looked at Tsunade, as if looking for verification, before he broke out into even louder laughter. Hinata trailing not far behind with dainty giggles. She did enjoy seeing Naruto happy. Tsunade continued as if Naruto wasn't about to risk opening any wounds. Unfortunately, we can't take the property or anything inside of it since we'll be leaving, but I'm getting everything else put into sealing scrolls so we won't have any extra weight or luggage to carry and can cover far more ground much more quickly. How does a sealing scroll work? I may need one for some of my stuff. Naruto said, wondering if he could take some of the things he had from his home. There wasn't much, but he had recently bought a whole lot of ramen and had a few things that he would like to keep, for sure. And, if you could seal some things, why not others? Tsunade blinked before pulling out one of the scrolls that were always on her person with standard supplies in case she needed them, like blotters, scrolls, ink and the like. This symbol is the standard seal used for storage scrolls. It's linked to a pocket of space that isn't actually here, but linked only to that seal. So, if you have one thing, you just put it on the seal, cover it in chakra and then put the chakra on the seal and it gets sucked right up into it. It's like it gets slurped in through a straw, so to speak, Tsunade explained, making sure Naruto was following. So, there's like a giant pocket in the universe that only has an opening to that seal? And each seal is like that? Naruto asked, making sure. Yes. But, if you want to seal a whole pile of things, then you have to surround the whole pile in chakra, just like putting it all into a sack and then touch that chakra to the seal. So, the more you seal at once, the more chakra you need, and the larger the risk of running out. Most people use too much, but they don't seal a lot to make it really hurt them. But that's why not everyone is taught to do it, because it usually weakens people too much. That's why sealing items isn't taught at the academy, since students could hurt themselves. Is there a limit to size or how long it can be in there? Naruto asked curiously. Depends on the person doing the sealing, Tsunade said with a shrug. The only limit is to what the person can put in with their chakra and control to surround whatever they want in. Now, I've got to tell you about your family, too, she said, getting a gasp from Hinata and a startled, what? From Naruto that drowned out Ino's curious, huh? Naruto, because of the Kyuubi and because of who your father was, Sarutobi thought. And I agreed at the time I learned it, that it would be best if you didn't know who your parents were until you were strong enough to defend yourself. Children have a bad habit of not being able to keep secrets, so it was certainly not safe until you were older to talk about it. I guess Sarutobi just didn't get around to telling you yet. What do you mean? Naruto asked, feeling betrayed by the recently deceased Sandaime. Naruto, your mother's name was Uzumaki Kushina. She was a Junin in Whirlpool before she came to Konoha after meeting your father. Her family was actually one of two that founded the village. And it prospered until the last Shinobi War, where Iwa wiped it out. Naruto's face fell as Hinata and Ino, the latter still hiding outside, leaned closer to the source of the intriguing tale. That would mean he most likely didn't have any real blood family left. What about my dad? Tsunade sighed, knowing this would hurt more than probably anything else he had learned that day. But, he had to know. And it was best to learn now, while they had the chance to let him calm down before they went into the wilderness. Your father was Namikaze Minato. He was the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Naruto, Hinata and Ino's eyes all widened. My own father put the Kyuubi in me? Naruto asked. Why? Tsunade sighed once again, not appreciating that Sarutobi had left her with this particular job. Naruto, your father, like most are, was incredibly proud of his son. You were just born and he only knew of one way to help the village. But, in the process, he planned on helping you, too. What do you mean? The blonde-haired boy asked. Minato designed the seal so that you would absorb the Kyuubi's strength and power as you aged, she confessed, deciding to explain exactly what Sarutobi's journals said. He wanted you to have that power and to have a name as great as his, if not even better, and provided for you the best way he knew how. There was one other birth that night, but he felt it was a form of revenge on the fox to give you his power and make you the strongest human in the world. And, could you really see the Hokage asking another family to make a sacrifice like that? Your mother died during childbirth and he knew he had to sacrifice his life for the jutsu to work since no one else knew the technique, so he felt that he could leave you with the power of the Kyuubi where you could train to be great and powerful and help the people who meant something to you. Sarutobi wasn't sure when, exactly, but the seal was designed to eventually transfer all of the Kyuubi's power to you and make you the strongest person alive, even more than all of the known demons. Your mother had died during childbirth and he was going to sacrifice his own life to send it away, so he wanted his son to benefit where no one else could as well. And, with the number of enemies he had both within Konoha, who didn't like the way he ran things during the war, and outside, from the number of people he killed, he felt it was one of the better ways to ensure you survived. Even then, only a very small number of people knew in the beginning and it was supposed to remain secret from everyone else. Tsunade spread her arms out imploringly, not sure what more she could tell him. From what I understand, a member of the council learned about you and told the others, but didn't explain all of the fail-safes that the Yondaime had put in to make sure you would gain the fox's power but not controlled by it. He told them that the Yondaime put the fox into a child so it could be killed. Sarutobi had to explain the truth, but by then, it was too late. That councilman had already allowed the information to leak out to the public, which is why you were treated so damned badly to this day. And, because he didn't do anything that was technically against the law, and because the other councilman thought he was blowing the whistle on the Yondaime's plans, Sarutobi would have been in serious trouble for disciplining the man for letting the information get out, since he didn't know it was supposed to be secret, or so he said. Sarutobi did all he could and told the man to disband the means in which he learned about everything, but he had already made things difficult. Naruto was unsure about what to think. Everything sounded normal, or at least legitimate, and it made sense in a creepy, narcissistic way. So, the Yondaime is my dad and he put the Kyuubi in me because he wanted to make me strong? He asked in a mostly dead tone. All the women present, even the hidden one in the hall, winced at it before Tsunade corrected him slightly. That, but also because he knew the fox wouldn't want to die, so it would try to protect you. Your increased regeneration is likely because of that, and your stamina, too. You're constantly getting its chakra to fill your own reserves and make them larger, which is one of the biggest reasons you have such poor control over your chakra, but already have reserves that are bigger than mine by about triple. It just keeps growing. We'll be taking care of that once we hit the road and get out of this dump of a village Thursday night. The council's banishment order on you doesn't take effect until Saturday, but I'm still worried they may try and send Hunter Nin, so I'm wanting to leave early like I mentioned earlier. Naruto nodded sullenly. If you guys don't mind, I think I'd like to get some sleep. Alright, but remember that we're leaving Thursday night to make sure those bastards in the council don't try to kill you before giving you the chance to get out of here, so I need you to stay in the hospital and not leave until then. Even act like you're still wounded. Myself and Shizune are the only ones allowed to check up on you, so no one should know how quickly you're healing for now. Understand? Naruto nodded and the group of girls got up as Ino quickly left, having more than just a little to think about. We understand, Naruto-kun. Our rest and we'll make sure Ayame-san brings you plenty of ramen, Hinata said, not feeling brave enough to risk giving him a hug or anything else similar. Sure, she had molested him while he was unconscious. And while she was unconscious, but now he knew she liked him. He didn't hate her for it, but he didn't accept her, either. At least not yet. Naruto tried to smile, but it came out a little sickly before he rolled over and wrapped himself in the blanket. Tsunade smiled as she finished double-checking she had authorized Naruto and Hinata as Chunin and freed them, along with herself and Shizune, of all obligations to Konoha as ninja members of their clans and just allowed them to keep their ninja status and ranks. Everything she had the impromptu team of Shikamaru, Ino and Shino get 2 days before was now in a scroll on the edge of her desk, along with the Forbidden Scroll, all of the equipment from the ANBU's supplies and the food rations for emergencies while the medical supplies were all in another scroll for safety and ease of access. And with Naruto around, she could unseal what she needed without unsealing all the other stuff, too. She was sure she'd need it. Hinata had arrived earlier for their daily meetings and had given her every scroll she had access to from the Hyuga archives and had apparently broken protocol to access the restricted area and borrowed the advanced technique and taijutsu scrolls overnight, long enough to copy them, although without the elegant framework and artistry, and had replaced them early in the morning before most others had awakened, though she couldn't get anything from the head's private library. The girl was surprisingly efficient and had an odd knack for stealth. Though, it could also have been the fact that, once she was done with her family's scrolls, she spent all of her time with Naruto. Tsunade had to admit that she was thankful to the little Hyuga for that. The boy had been like a zombie when she went back to check his healing progress. He tried to show emotion, but it was easy to tell he was as miserable as it was possible to get. It was depressing, to be honest. But Hinata had been able to pull him out a little each time they met and, by the middle of the day, they were talking about all sorts of things and he was fine until he was left alone again. She had even explained the types of things that happened to the branch side of the Hyuga family and why she was pleased to leave because of it. Naruto had almost gone feral at the knowledge, but the Hyuga maiden calmed him and Tsunade was pleased while she was eavesdropping. The girl was growing quickly in confidence while around Naruto. Well, perhaps it was best to say she was nearly over her stuttering and fainting while around Naruto as long as he didn't make any possibly suggestive comments. Hinata was still extremely shy and seemed to always have a blush on her face, along with a minor nosebleed, but loved spending time with him and actually talking to him. And was at her happiest when he was unconscious. It didn't take long to realize that the girl had roaming hands and that urge to explore unknown territory that made Jiraiya so infamous. The difference was that she was very reserved and didn't go anywhere naughty unless she was unconscious herself. Jiraiya was just a bloody pervert. Tsunade-sama. Shizune interrupted the Hokage's mental checklist that had gotten a little off track. Jiraiya-sama is here as you requested. Speak of the perverted devil, Tsunade thought as she nodded, pleased to see that Shizune kept to her word and allowed no one entry into her office without her approval. Had that genin team heard the wrong information, there would be no telling what may have happened, especially with Ino being well known to thrive on gossip and juicy news. Go ahead and send him in. Seconds later, Jiraiya entered the room and sat in the chair across from the desk with a large pout. You made me wait in the waiting room? He asked incredulously. Those tiny chairs are uncomfortable as hell. Tsunade ignored his protests and got straight to the point. I've got a favor to ask of you, she told him simply, getting a raised eyebrow. Oh, what would that be? He asked, wondering what she would ask of him. The last time she needed a favor, she hooked him up with a very lithe and flexible girl in their genin days that he had been eyeballing. She hadn't offered him a favor since the girl found Tsunade and beat the hell out of her. Though, the medical techniques were exactly what had put Tsunade on her path to greatness. I really fucked up, she said bluntly. The council sent law reforms into effect while I was hung over and not really reading things properly and gave themselves extra powers, and now they're using that to banish Naruto. What? Jiraiya asked dangerously. Tsunade nodded, understanding his tone. I royally fucked up, but I'm not sending him out alone. I won't do that again. I'm actually leaving here with him, along with Shizune and the Hyuga heiress, Hinata. The girl who's got a crush on him? He asked, remembering a pretty Hyuga girl that was always spying on his training during the 1-month reprieve before the Chunin exam finals. The girl was wounded and still came to watch him. That alone let Jiraiya not stop the girl and made him decide to see if his new student would live up to the reputation of the great Jiraiya. That, and the girl was a pervert after his own heart. She even had her own little notepad where she was taking notes. That's the one. I also made her confess that to him, and I think he's open to the idea, but needs a little time. He's latched onto her after we told him the situation and has come to enjoy talking with her. I hadn't considered it at the time, but taking someone his own age with him will help tremendously in giving him someone to confide in. Genjutsu or not, I'm still an adult to him, as is Shizune. Why don't you start from the beginning? Jiraiya asked with a sigh. He was thrilled that his godson may have a little romance coming his way, but this seemed like there would just be far too much trouble to let that remain at the top of his thoughts. However, as her story got a little longer, he grew more and more amused. It was bad, yes, but Tsunade had pulled through and made more than the best of it. I've got to tell you, I've always wondered if they would try something like this, or execution, or sending out a hunter nin to take him out while away from the village, but I didn't expect this in combination with your plans. Tsunade nodded in agreement, so did Sarutobi. That's one of the reasons he was put with Kakashi. The man could protect his charges from most of our hunter nin and teach Naruto to protect himself at the same time. The only problem was that the bastard only taught the brat tree climbing and let him spar with his teammates and focused almost exclusively on the traitor due to his own history. While this means I can teach the Gaki from the ground up to mold him into whatever I want, it's bad because it means I'm working from nothing. That's part of why I need your help. Jiraiya nodded, finding little in the way of flaws in its logic. So, let me guess. You want me to take over as Hokage to give you guys a better lead? Maybe put in a few laws into effect to really piss them off and the like? Tsunade snorted. Hell no, she exclaimed, much to Jiraiya's shock. Then she went even further. I'll make enough laws to piss them off that they'll learn about after they find out we're gone. I need you to continue working on your spy network since Akatsuki is still a threat and will learn he's out there, along with almost everyone else, so I can't take you with us or put you as Hokage. I'm actually asking you for a dozen copies of each of your books, all autographed with a few autographed pictures to take with us. Jiraiya groaned and palmed his face. Damn it, Kakashi. I told you to stop trying this. Jiraiya yelled while shaking a fist at the shocked Tsunade. I'll admit you did much better on the illusion this time and even had me with the story, but I'm not falling for it. I'm not Kakashi, you pervert. To prove her point, she punched the Sannin in the face and watched in satisfaction as he bounced off of the wall and came halfway back to her desk before he groaned an apology. In my defense, Jiraiya said from the floor, Kakashi's tried to get me to give him autographed copies like this 6 times already. Why the hell doesn't he just ask? Tsunade asked while Jiraiya got up. Hell if I know, Jiraiya said as he limped back to his seat. Why the hell do you want autographed copies of my work? I thought you hated it. Tsunade sighed and decided that she had to tell him. She didn't want to, but it was for her adopted little brother. I'm going to force Naruto and Hinata to read them as part of my plan to get the two together, she said with an almost non-existent blush. While I don't like the idea of Naruto going around peeping on women, I'm willing to allow damn near anything else to make sure he has a happy and active love life. If this means turning the two into perverts and giving them rooms alone to get up to whatever naughty stuff they want to, I'm willing to allow it and plan to do so just to help the situation progress. Naruto is trying to be strong, but he's been crushed by this shit from the council. He's always tried to work hard and force everyone's opinions of him to change, but this is like the ultimate failure. In a relationship, he can get something back out of this. Some semblance of what he had been trying to get here. Aside from that, while I hate the fact that it's got a lot of smut, it can help him understand love and romance as well. I'm loath to say it, but your main line of books has a good and solid plot that he can learn from. She watched in exasperation as Jiraiya began to weep and grovel at her feet, thanking her and offering to suck on her toes in praise of her plan. He had a thing for feet. She didn't understand it, it creeped her out. Sighing, she sat down and asked, does this mean you'll cough up the books? Why do you want so many? He asked as he got back in his chair, his grin still in place. Tsunade had long ago said she would never admit his books to be worth anything more than burn fodder, and this was while she was standing over the charred remains of his notepad. I figured we could offer them in trade if we needed to badly enough or sell them if we need the cash, though I don't see that as likely. We can even gain the favor of some of the perverts who are in charge since you only normally sign 10 of every edition. I'm actually taking off with a shitload of money, too, but it's mostly going to be Naruto's or Senju clan cash and I hope to save that for as long as possible. Jiraiya frowned as he realized one very, very important fact about this plan. Ah man, I'm not going to be there to watch their advancement. Pouting again, he asked, so what do I get out of this, then, if I can't watch my protege become a man? And he hoped often. Tsunade groaned and began to chant a mantra in her head of, this is all for Naruto, this is all for Naruto. You've offered far less to see my ass. After the nosebleed sent him through several walls, Tsunade could hear him yelling his answer. Yes, oh sweet Kami, yes. Daddy. Ino hugged her father happily, glad he was back. Choji and Shikamaru's fathers had both arrived the day before and her father was the only one who was missing and she had begun to worry. They were all on different missions, so it was expected that they would show up at different times, but after the one-day war and learning about Naruto's past, she had been extremely tense and nervous. And her mother hadn't helped matters in the least. Hey, baby girl, how are you holding up? Inoichi asked wearily. I'm doing well, so is Shikamaru. He only got a broken finger, but Choji had to use his family's food pills to beat his opponent and almost died. He's going to get better, but he isn't gaining weight and the doctors can't figure out why, Ino said in one long breath. Are you good to eat and have a talk with me? There are some things I need to ask you about. Inoichi's mind first went to the subject of boys and hormones before he realized that his daughter would probably go to her mother first, and felt it was not too likely after the near death of her teammates unless she already harbored feelings that only just came out, then went to ninja-related ideas, but they were so numerous that he had no clue where to even begin. Not a problem, sweetie. Just let me drop my things in. Inoichi. His wife exclaimed happily as she wrapped him up in a big hug. Welcome home, I'll heat something to eat for you. And then she was gone, causing Inoichi to blink and then smile down at his daughter. Well, I guess that means we can go ahead and speak. What's on your mind? He asked as they entered the room he had taken as his office and stowed away his gear, refilling used items before putting his pack at its place, ready to be taken at a moment's notice. Daddy, you're on the village council, right? Ino asked, deciding to find out how much her own father may have been guilty of before putting him on his guard to ask about Naruto. Surprised, Inoichi hesitated before he sat. Yes, I am, he said. Why do you ask? Ino sat in the leather chair, one that she always remembered was made from the skin of the Nara clan's deer when she sat in it, and took a deep breath. When was the last time you banished someone from Konoha? Inoichi frowned heavily, wondering what made Ino want to know such a thing. Either someone she knew had been hurt, or some soon-to-be dead man had hurt her and she was wanting to know what to do about it. If that was the case, the man wouldn't have the chance to be banished. The last time was about a year ago when we had to declare one of our ninja who went rogue as a missing nin, and then a few years before that to do the same to Uchiha Itachi after he killed his family and escaped the village. Why do you ask? Ino nodded, pleased her father wasn't against Naruto when it came to his banishment. Do you know Uzumaki Naruto? She asked, watching her dad very carefully. The man was far from an idiot. He helped with torture and interrogation, and that required a strong mind and the intelligence to glean as much as you can from the smallest of scraps and find connections that should be almost impossible to find. His little girl asking about banishment and then Uzumaki Naruto was far from an impossible connection. Nervously, and wondering where she was going with this, Inoichi nodded. I do, yes. Why? 2 days ago, I found out that the council banished Naruto and I have a pretty good idea why, she admitted, looking away from her father. Inoichi's hackles rose as he realized the position his daughter was in. If she overheard something about the Kyuubi and then spoke about it to anyone but him or her mother, she would have most likely been killed, unless it didn't get too out of hand, and even then, it would have been close. If someone told her this deliberately, however, then that was almost as bad as them waiting for her to take the information and commit suicide by blathering on about it. The girl was at the center of the gossip hub, after all. Nothing we say will leave this room, Ino, he said heavily, gentle father gone and full-out warrior in its place. But I need to know what you know. Ino frowned, trying to decide how best to answer him before shaking her head futilely. It would probably be best if you entered my mind and watched the memory, she told him, not sure where to begin. The amount of information and severity of it was almost mind-numbing. But you have to promise not to do anything to stop the Hokage from their plans. Curious, Inoichi nodded. Alright, I won't fight, just push me out if you need to. Getting a nod, he entered the dark void of her mind, much like a huge room filled with bubbles in the air that housed the multitude of memories she possessed, and waited for her to push the one he wanted to him just as they did in practice for their clan techniques. As one bubble rushed towards him, he began to focus on the task at hand and took in as many details as he could. Tsunade sighed as Jiraiya twitched on the ground, covered in his own drool. The deal had been very clear. She would leave herself exposed and take whatever pose he wanted for 10 minutes in exchange for a scroll filled with jutsu, particularly those related to use with his toad summons, and the dozen complete sets of his erotica smut, all autographed. Jiraiya had even offered to sweeten the pot with the books he wrote about sealing over 2 decades ago that he planned to use after he retired from his ninja duties. It was several volumes long and explained things in such detail that it would easily become the standard in shinobi sealing education. But now it was all Naruto's. Thankfully, him passing out at the sight of her only half-uncovered memories as she began to uncover them was not brought up in the deal, so she sat there with her girls hanging out, though she was surprised to find that she enjoyed the partial breeze from the open window, without even being seen, and had to admit, the experience wasn't nearly as bad as she had expected. She had honestly thought he'd stay alert through the whole thing. As it was, he didn't even get to see the complete prize. He saw the upper half of her expansive bosom, about as much in a low-cut top, and was out for the whole 10 minutes. Yes, it wasn't nearly as bad as she had expected. Whistling a happy tune, she gathered the items and sealed them in their own scrolls and took them to meet up with Shizune and take her to speak with Naruto and Hinata, who was sure to be there with him. You feel normal, Hinata told Naruto as she checked his temperature with the back of her hand on his forehead, taking careful note to lean against Naruto over the bed so her chest touched his. Just because he hadn't accepted her as a girlfriend right away, it didn't mean she couldn't use every opportunity to touch him in whatever way she could. She rather enjoyed doing it, actually. I dunno. I just had this sudden chill race down my spine, Naruto said with a frown, unaware that Tsunade had just told Jiraiya her plans for his love life. Hinata shrugged and held up Naruto's ramen for him to take a bite. We'll figure it out when Tsunade Shisho comes over. Now, eat up. Naruto grumbled good-naturedly and took the proffered noodles. And, why are we doing tseich again? He asked with his mouth full. Swallow and then talk, Hinata scolded lightly. Tsunade Shisho told us to make it appear as though you're still weak, and this is quite conducive to that. Actually, it was because she was hoping to break him of the habit of eating his ramen in nearly a single bite and because she enjoyed doing it for him. He had been so welcoming to her presence that she almost felt ashamed of how nervous she had been in the past. Had she actually approached him and befriended him, there would be no telling how far along she could have had him trained into the proper boyfriend by now. That thought alone spurred her on and kept her pushing the boundaries. And even odder, she found that she relished the odd friendship she had with him now. He was the exact same Naruto she always knew, caring, helpful, friendly and even empowering, but by having developed this friendship with him while he knew her deepest secret, or at least the one she was most scared of him finding out, she realized there was this anticipatory state where she wanted to get him to agree to be hers. Since he wasn't pushing her away or saying it couldn't happen, then that was just great. That meant every single action she did, every little thing she said, it would all build to relationship points. It was like a game where she really couldn't lose. Naruto did as told without a second thought and then asked, "So, are you really ready to do this? Tomorrow's the big day." Hinata nodded immediately. "I am. I get to be with you," she said, blushing prettily as it was still different to say the words, even though he knew them, "and will be learning my preferred art from the best medic in the elemental countries." Naruto nodded and then was quiet for several moments before he smiled at the girl. "I'm still glad to have you coming with us. You're the only person to really inspire me to really try hard aside from old man Sarutobi." What? Hinata asked. She had helped him? When? Naruto smiled softly at her, different from his usual ones that were so wide they pushed his eyes shut. "Right before the finals at the Chunin exams," he explained. "I was heading to the stadium and was wondering if I could really do it. And you were there and told me that I screw up, a lot, but that I never stop trying." He smiled wider and could barely see her through his scrunched eyes. "You'll always be important to me for that." Hinata felt a rush of heat fill her chest and face as Naruto's words filled her with happiness. It was impossible for her to keep her smile off of her face, so she looked down and played with the bowl that held Naruto's ramen. Thank you." As if on cue from some unholy god, the door to the bedroom slammed open from Tsunade's outstretched foot where she had kicked it open, holding a pile of scrolls while Shizune carried Taunton. "Ba-chan, what the hell? Don't you ever knock?" Naruto yelled out from the side of the bed where he had taken an immediate battle stance next to Hinata who had done the same. "Stop your grumbling," she muttered, dropping the scrolls on the bed. "We've got to finalize preparations and make sure we've got everything ready for tomorrow night." Shizune closed the door and cast a privacy jutsu that stopped sound waves so no one would be able to hear them without the aid of an electronic listening device. "Tsunade-sama, please don't speak so loud until everything's in place," she grumbled. There were many doctors roaming this hall compared to the past few days when there were very few and any of them could be informants for the council members who were causing problems. Tsunade ignored her, feeling flush from her major victory over her perverted teammate. "Hinata, have you got everything ready?" "Yes. I've copied everything of value from the Hyuga clan archives and have taken everything from my home that I cared to keep in the sealing scroll you provided yesterday after showing me how to use them. You said to only bring clothes for court and enough to blend into any environment since we would be getting everything on the road, but only without the Hyuga emblem, so I don't have much aside from a couple of kimonos. I've also placed a letter to Kurenai-sensei in my kunai pouch to mail tomorrow so she will get word of what's going on without telling her anything that could jeopardize us to make sure she doesn't worry." Tsunade nodded pleasantly. Good. Make sure to have a kimono ready for when we enter the daimyo's court, just in case we need it." "I doubt we will, but it's always good for a lady to be prepared." Turning to Naruto, she said, "We'll have to resupply you with standard clothes later, I'm afraid. All you've got are those jumpsuits and things to wear underneath while you're at home. Is there anything I should be worried about taking?" Naruto asked, unsure. "I usually have everything I like to keep on me and don't really leave anything at my apartment, but I've got ramen and some plants and stuff. Only the things you want to, but nothing else, really. You'll be getting new equipment and clothes outside." The capital will have a large assortment of, well, everything, really, so we can get anything we need there. And I'm sure some of the clothes from the Uchiha estate will fit if we need them at the daimyo's place. Sitting back, Tsunade decided to explain the details as they were thus far, bringing everyone up to date. Okay, here's what we've got so far. We've taken about 40% of the village's liquid assets by restitution from Sasuke to everyone who went on that mission to get him. Naruto getting the majority of it, of course, along with what came with his inheritance from his father, and 20% was from Senju clan funds that I wasn't even aware that I had. She decided they didn't need to learn anything about who, how or why that information had been withheld from her, or why there were standing orders for it all to be transferred to various civilian members of the council with her death. We've got supplies to outfit 4 squads of ninja, so we have more than enough equipment, some tech for long-range communications if we need them, jutsu scrolls to learn from while we're out and trying to decide what we're going to do, food to last us probably 2 years in isolation if we need to just go underground and hole up in some cave system somewhere, including water, and I've released everyone going on this little expedition from any kinds of duties or obligations to Konoha or our families, she said with a pointed look to Hinata, who was quite thankful. So, it's basically what you told us yesterday? Naruto asked. Tsunade nodded slightly, but looked uncomfortable. There's more this time, actually, she said, turning to Naruto. Naruto, would you do anything to protect Hinata? Shocked, Naruto nodded emphatically. Of course I would. Before he could get into a rant, Tsunade turned to Hinata and asked the same. And would you do anything for Naruto? Hinata simply nodded, curious to know what was going on. Tsunade grinned widely, looking far too smug. Good, then I want you to know that, even though I released you from Konoha and the Hyuga, in your case, Hinata, they could still bring you back through an arranged marriage of one form or another since you actually carry the Byakugan. What? Naruto yelled, full of righteous indignation. I found a way around it, Tsunade said, stopping Naruto mid-rant. As of midnight tonight, you will both be husband and wife. Thump. Tsunade and Shizune both turned expectantly at Hinata's chair, expecting to see a red-faced, unconscious and smiling Hyuga. Well, Uzumaki now. Instead, they saw her smiling at the bed, cheeks barely tinted red and trailing a small line of blood from her nose. Looking back at the bed, they saw only Naruto's foot that was sticking up from the ground, twitching. Oh, we are so screwed, Inoichi grumbled as he pinched the bridge of his nose after leaving Ino's mindscape. The council somehow managed to banish Naruto without the whole group present and had apparently done so legally since Tsunade couldn't fight her way out of it and was leaving with the boy. That meant that those who did so had to have done something to grant themselves more power or somehow found a law in the books that gave them more authority than the Hokage. And he knew a law like that didn't exist or he'd have been gone a long time ago. He always supported Naruto, along with the Nara, Akamichi and other shinobi clans other than the Uchiha who actively opposed the boy and the Hyuga who was willing to let the boy exist if there was some form of control. And of course Danzo who wanted to turn the kid into a weapon, so certainly wanted him alive, and those who followed Danzo's lead. However, this also meant that those who had to have found a way to give themselves more control had to have done so with only a portion of the complete council, since those same clans wouldn't have allowed it to get that far. It was commonly done of course, as many of those clan heads had business that had them outside of the village at times, but should be impossible for serious matters like this. They had to be able to meet and eke out details while the ninja portion was on missions, but something of this magnitude? No, there would be a civil war coming. It was obvious that the council had just split into 2 factions, and only one side even knew about it. Daddy? Ino asked, worried at how depressed her father had just become. Inoichi looked up and into the eyes of his little girl and realized that she was going to be caught up in the middle of things, and there was only one thing he could possibly do to help her. You did the right thing, Ino. Had you gone to anyone else, you would have probably been put to death if it got out to the public. Maybe just probation if it was stopped in time, he said while thinking plans up on the fly. Honey, what do you think of Naruto? Is he a good person? Surprised in the sudden shift in topics, Ino nodded. Yes, he is. Ever since I found out about all of this, I've been going over every memory I had of him using our spirit walk technique, she said. The technique itself was nothing more than the ability to read memories of someone rather than the actual thought processes. So, it would be impossible to use for finding out what a person was planning, as it only showed memories they stored in long-term areas of the brain. But it was also capable of being used on oneself to sort through and organize memories, which was something all Yamanaka had to do, or they could accidentally give control to the enemy if their mind was too cluttered or weak for disorganization. And? Inoichi asked, curious despite himself. He liked the kid, but he never really had anything to do with the young Uzumaki. Ino hesitated only a moment before summing up her thoughts in the one phrase she had been using since the start. I honestly don't know why he hasn't already destroyed Konoha. Eh? Inoichi asked incredulously. Red-faced, Ino amended herself. Well, what I mean is that I would have destroyed Konoha several times over if I were him. I went around under a henge to look like him because I was curious about how much I saw was his whole life, and it was horrible. The villagers didn't even try to hide their dislike of him. They called him names to his face, blamed Sasuke-kuer, Sasuke's defection on him, and all sorts of bad things. And almost all of the shops overcharged him. So, if he still wants to stay here and earn their respect and protect them, I figure he has to be a really good person. Not to mention that I've only ever seen him try to help people or make them laugh. I've never seen him hurt anyone. Inoichi nodded, having not ever really considered the boy's position in the village and how it had to be for him beyond acknowledging things were bad. That makes sense, I suppose. Why do you ask? Ino asked, wondering what her father was thinking. Sighing, Inoichi decided to get straight to the point. Honey, what the council did, it had to have done without any of the ninja clans around. Most of us support the boy having full faith and trust in the Yondaime's seal and the man himself. The civilians don't understand the nature of seals and scare far too easily. They are the ones who would be doing this to him, and they managed to give themselves power somehow that went behind the ninja clan's backs. If I know them even a quarter of as well as I think I do, this could very well risk a civil war in Konoha. What? Ino squawked. But this is Konoha. We are a ninja village just like any other, Inoichi interrupted her. We may have a kinder face than many others, but don't be fooled. We have power struggles quite often, just like any other village. Wherever there is a structured government, there will be people who want to be the top dog. The difference is that it usually happens in a political climate here rather than in a bloody coup like in Mist. You can't even begin to imagine how many attempts there have been to wage war in the past year and each year on average. Some people simply enjoy and thrive in it, and even Konoha has those people, some of them in very high places in our infrastructure. Oh, Ino mumbled as she sat back in her chair. Honey, Inoichi began as he put a comforting hand on her shoulder. I think Konoha is going to be in for some rough times ahead. There are a lot of people who like the boy, but many who still fear or hate him. The ninja clans are probably going to be at odds against all of the civilians soon because of this. It looks like they're somehow managing to amass power for themselves and trying to circumvent us, so you'll need to be on your toes when out in public, understand? Ino nodded, hesitant to offer a suggestion she had been thinking of for the last day and a half. What if I asked Tsunade-sama if I could join her? What? Inoichi asked, shocked. It isn't that I want to leave you. Ino rushed to assure her father, but it's going to be a long time before my team is back on missions or training. Asuma-sensei didn't do a lot of training for us and mostly played strategy games with Shika, and is on missions now, so I won't be getting much training in, and Choji will be in the hospital for another couple of weeks at least. I could learn a lot from Tsunade-sama. I don't really care so much about medical skills, but there isn't really much here that I can learn aside from the interrogation techniques our family usually does. But with every Junin and Chunin, just about, out on missions, teaching a fresh genin isn't going to be high on their to-do list, and everyone is saying Orochimaru is still planning on attacking again sometime. So it may be safer with Tsunade-sama, where I can learn her super strength and to heal people so I can at least be useful. Ino immediately took a deep breath, not having realized she had run out of air before she paused in sudden nervousness to see what her father would say. Inoichi regulated his breathing as he thought through the different scenarios in his head, and, as much as he was loath to admit it, the girl had a genius plan. And most important, to him at least, it kept her out of the possible conflicts that were sure to come there in Konoha. Especially with the knowledge that the ninja clans would have to go on the offensive if they wanted to not lose their rights to the civilians. Tsunade was sure to encounter trouble on the outside, but who better to protect his little princess than a real princess in Sanin? I think you need to ask her to see, he finally said. But, if she accepts you, I'll help you gather as much as I can. Just understand that things will not be the cakewalk they've been here in Konoha. She's bound to put you through your paces and work you into the ground to get as good as she is, and you may have to do things that make you uncomfortable since you'll be learning about what's inside of a body with her surgery techniques and such. Ino nodded vigorously, having already considered that and feeling it would be easier on her to heal those things than cause them. I think it will also help with our clan's normal jobs, too. I can do better with interrogation if I understand the body better. If you're going to find out and get your stuff ready by tomorrow night, then you should talk to Tsunade-sama now, Inoichi warned, thankful it was still early in the day. Let her know you have my support and that I'll handle your mother if she has any problems with it and that I need to know what you need to take with you. Ino hugged her father and left, leaving the man to his thoughts as he waited for his wife to bring his meal. He would have to meet with his friends and discuss this new situation over a hell of a lot of sake. Konoha would be in the middle of a civil war by the next week's end. What do you mean we're getting married? Naruto screeched out in fear. Here, he had been thinking of dating Hinata, but now he was married to her. Seeing the sudden pang of hurt on Hinata's face, Naruto turned and held up his hands in a defensive gesture. It isn't that I don't want to be married to you, Hinata, but I mean, I was only just considering dating. Turning narrowed eyes on the amused Hokage, Naruto asked, did you have a bet on us getting together with Ero Sanin or something? Tsunade waved off Naruto's question. No, nothing like that. He actually didn't know about it until half an hour ago. Then why? Because this helps us in many ways, Naruto, Shizune said, feeling she could explain better since Tsunade was doing a poor job at it. If Hinata were not married, then her family could marry her to anyone they wanted and force her to come back. The problem, though, is that they would put a seal on her that would. The caged bird seal, I know, Naruto said, glaring at the wall and leaking a minor amount of killing intent. I hate that seal. In truth, he hated it more than his own seal. He hated what it stood for when Neji had told him about it during the Chunin exam finals, but when Hinata explained that some of the main branch members of the Hyuga used it to rape the cadet branch members, or rather, to keep them in line to rape them whenever they wanted, and to just cause pain or kill those who didn't obey fully and immediately, he hated it as thoroughly as he hated Orochimaru. Yes, Shizune stuttered, wondering how he knew as she darted a furtive glance at Hinata. The seal was a touchy subject with all Hyuga and she hadn't thought Hinata would talk about it quite yet. Anyway, it would make her nothing more than a slave, so he did this because, being married to you, she must follow her husband and, since you're banished, they can't force her to come back without allowing you to come back as well and no one can force her away from you, even after bringing you back. Peeved at Shizune explaining her brilliant idea, Tsunade continued on. And it saves us from worrying about anyone else from other villages trying to do the same with either of you since you'll both be big targets for political marriages once it gets out that you're the Yondaime's son, Naruto, and Hinata is an unsealed Hyuga. This also lets us cut down on the number of hotel rooms we'll get, she duly noted Hinata's sudden blush and wider grin, and gives us a good cover for the two of you if you need it. We do not want Hinata-chan here to have a room to herself where someone could try to come in and steal her away, do we? No, Naruto grumbled, not sure about this new plan. But I don't know how to be a husband, he complained. Tsunade and Shizune chuckled while Hinata had to refrain herself from doing something embarrassing. Naruto, Shizune said with a smile. A husband and wife are supposed to be great friends who care for each other and look out for each other. They share their lives and their dreams and do their best to help each other achieve them. So, they are basically like best friends, but you get to kiss, hug, hold hands and do other stuff together as well, including raising a family later on in life. Naruto cocked his head to look at Shizune, then down to Hinata and nodded resolutely. I can do that, he said, showing the same conviction he did with everything else while Hinata squealed quietly to herself. Besides, he had already promised he would get rid of the caged bird seal after Neji explained what it did. Hooray for the other stuff. Hinata's inner self yelled at the top of her lungs, wondering when they got to have a wedding night. Good, Tsunade said, we'll see about a proper ceremony later, but it will be official at midnight. Granted, that was midnight 2 days ago, but it was a minor detail. Other than that, does everyone know their parts of the plan? I'm to meet with you as normal tomorrow and we will get Naruto-kun and then go to eat Chiraku ramen for our final dinner. Then I will leave to meet up with you in your office 1 hour later, Tsunade Shisho, Hinata said, getting a nod from the woman. I'm going to wait for you guys to take me from here to there, eat, go to the bathroom and make a cage bunchin to come back to the hospital while I'm under a disguise with Hinata-chan. Then we meet you in your office and all leave together, right? Naruto asked, getting another nod and rub on the top of his head. Perfect, Naruto, Tsunade praised. Remember, I'll want you to make a good show of just hearing the information then and there, understood? Naruto grinned warmly, feeling a pang of hurt that was offset with the knowledge that these people were coming with him because they actually cared. Don't worry, Ba-chan. I've got a plan, he confessed, stealing a glance at Hinata whom had heard said plan earlier. She had even offered to do the ink work necessary since she had far better penmanship and a steadier hand to make the required item. This isn't going to cause me a headache, is it? Tsunade growled out, wondering what the boy was up to. No, Naruto said innocently. But I think you'll enjoy it. Tsunade shrugged. What the hell? Go for flashy. She was almost worried by his and Hinata's grins. You wanted something? Tsunade grunted at the young blonde girl waiting outside of her office as she kicked her door open and entered, expecting the girl to follow. Tsunade didn't care so much about pleasantries since she planned on being gone the next night. Ino followed the woman into the room, not getting a negative response in doing so, and shut the door, sitting quietly and nervously in the chair across from the older woman who was now watching her lazily, looking as though her time was being wasted frivolously. First, I want to say that no matter what happens here, I'll stay quiet about everything at least until after you're gone, Ino said, flinching as Tsunade's eyes widened and the desk under her elbow cracked. I'm going to kill Jiraiya, Tsunade said calmly, too calmly, erroneously thinking that he was the leak and told the girl all he knew. Yes, Ino was quite pretty, but she was a damn child. The old pervert should know better than that. He was as old as she was. Even if Tsunade wouldn't admit her true age even to herself at this point in time, it was still old. It may be common to wed their young, female ninja at times to older men, but that was for a purpose. Not some perverted old man ogling their bits. I overheard you talking to Hinata and Naruto a few days ago when you told him he was being kicked out, Ino said, making Tsunade narrow her eyes and frown. So you heard about things that are considered S-class secrets and classified, Tsunade stated more than asked. I haven't heard about havoc in the village, so I'm assuming you haven't already gone around telling people, so you're not going to be killed right away. Tell me why that isn't going to become the result anyway. Ino gulped and began to sweat. Suddenly, the danger of being a ninja in her own village became more real than she had known in the past. I want to go with you? She squeaked out, looking unsure. You want to leave your village, your family and your team? Tsunade asked incredulously, wondering what made Ino think she would believe that. You have nothing to lose here. Try again, girlie. Ino glared at the older woman, hating being dismissed like that. I overheard about Naruto and spent the last 2 days thinking about the situation. I even went around under a henge to look like him, though the Ichiraku ramen people knew I wasn't him somehow and got mad at me while everyone else just got mad because they thought I was him. Get to the point, Tsunade interrupted while making mental notes. I decided he's a good guy and that he isn't the fox, Ino clipped out. I had hoped to talk to my mom about Naruto, but she didn't want to have anything to do with it when she knew it was him I was talking about, even though she didn't know what I found out. My dad came home about an hour ago and I showed him my memory of the meeting and he said he thinks a civil war will be coming soon between ninja and civilians and I told him I was thinking about this because I have no chance to become a kunoichi I can be proud of since all of the upper class ninja are spending all their time on missions to keep Konoha where we used to be and he said to let you know he supported it and would help me get things ready. Tsunade knew she should worry more about the words, civil war, coming secondhand through a known gossip hound. She also knew she should worry that some random factor now knew that she and the others were leaving, but all she could think about was this girl wanted to come with them and was another person who would help support Naruto. Another young, pretty girl who already knew his secret and was just coming into breeding years. And you want to come with us, you say? Ino couldn't explain it, but she felt a shiver race down her spine, making her ponytail stick out and become puffy like a cat's tail. Yes? She asked uncertainly. Anyone who is a part of a clan, even if all obligations are cut off between family and village, can still be brought back due to various laws that are agreed upon by all ninja villages regarding bloodlines, Tsunade began. If you're going to come with us, and not let anyone who gets angered by what your father is about to do threaten to bring you back for any reason, including making an example of you to punish your dad, then you will need to do as Naruto and Hinata have done and marry Naruto. What? Ino's ponytail looked like a mash of kunai, sticking up to defend her honor against anyone who wanted to touch her. It's simple, really, Tsunade said, deciding this would be the girl's test. If she was willing to do this and go with them, especially if more developed out of it, then she would take the girl with them. And in all honesty, she was going to make damned certain Naruto got whoever he wanted. Hinata was almost a guarantee. Ino was very pretty and already decided he was worth leaving for, at least in part. She obviously had her own reasons as well, but Naruto was still the catalyst. Sakura, she knew the boy liked, but was also a lost cause. She had already offered to betray Konoha to leave with Sasuke, who was leaving as a traitor. That was different than leaving for someone who was loyal and banished by a bunch of power-hungry bastards. Simple how? Ino asked. Well, I'm taking on those that go with us as apprentices and I have to know I can trust them. I also have to know that whatever I teach won't be forced back to Konoha to be learned here, since I'm teaching what has become Senju clan medical techniques, which I plan to leave to Naruto since I can't have children of my own. Also, we're leaving for Naruto's sake, since he was the only reason Shizune and I even came back. Anyone willing to join us will either be in this for helping Naruto first, and everything else second, or they will be either left behind or killed, whichever I feel is necessary to keep him safe. Seeing the girl's eyes widen and her face drain of color, Tsunade decided to ease the girl's discomfort. But just a little. You promised you'd remain quiet, so you would be safe if you don't think you can marry him, but left behind if you're curious. But I'm wanting to come along so I can actually get some training and be a good kunoichi, Ino murmured nervously. I know all of the Junin are being used on as many missions as they can and that we can't really work as teams anymore for training, so. Ino swallowed as Tsunade confirmed she would learn next to nothing if she were left to her own devices and stayed in Konoha before the woman continued, unheeding Ino's mental debate. I'll lay it out straight for you. I'm leaving to go with Naruto because I love the little brat. I came to Konoha because I believed in him, not this village. This village dimmed in my eyes long ago and it took him to bring me back. Shizune feels the same, and Hinata is going because she loves Naruto. So, even though he's the only one being forced out, we're leaving directly for him. I am also planning on getting Naruto to finally experience love and am planning on making damn sure he isn't alone in all this. I've already promised Hinata to help her get him and find her worthy of him. If you want to go, you have to be willing to give it a try and be willing to give it time and at least act like a true married couple and like you enjoy being married until we can get the marriage annulled, which won't be until we can come back or you find someone else to marry instead, just to keep you safe. It's just like when we have to marry our ninja for covers to hold up under scrutiny or insertion missions to have a hidden kunoichi somewhere to gather information. It's all official, but only has to go as far as the situation requires. So, I have to marry Naruto before we leave, act like I am not only married to him, but want to be married to him, and if I find someone else, I can get a divorce or annulment and marry them instead? Ino asked, wanting to be very sure. And wait, what about? Her blush told Tsunade everything she needed to know. Your wifely duties, particularly those related to bedtime fun? The smirking Hokage asked, rather amused. Ino squeaked and nodded, her blush now quite intense. In public, you will be required to hold hands, hug and kiss on occasion and give many little gestures of affection. Beyond that, you will share a room and we will require that you get comfortable around each other, especially since I'll have you giving each other exams to learn my techniques. Therefore, any time you go to bed, you will be required to be in your underwear at most or less if you want. As for the, I'll be encouraging it, but you won't have to actually do it. Encouraging it? Ino squawked. Why? Because I'm devoting my life to Naruto's. I'll help him train and become strong, I'll help him learn about love and be loved and I'll be there to help him through anything and everything else, Tsunade said firmly. I've already failed him, and I will not do it again. I see, Ino said. And in truth, she kind of did. Naruto had been an orphan and alone his entire life. She just didn't realize the full extent of it. If you want to come, have anything you need sealed in a sealing scroll and meet us back here at 11 tomorrow night. You'll need any and all jutsu you can get your hands on. We've got a lot, but clan-specific jutsu or any that may be rare that your family has, you'll want to copy and take with you. Any clothing without the Konoha emblem can be taken, but we'll have most of the supplies you'll need. Don't take anything with the Konoha seal unless you want to take your Hite 8 as a memento. You won't be wearing it again until we can come back to Konoha. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Ino chirruped in glee. One last warning, Tsunade said lowly. If you do anything to hurt Naruto or threaten him in any way, I'll destroy you myself. Do you understand me? The obvious sincerity within the Hokage's eyes made the younger blonde shiver, but she nodded. I don't plan on hurting him. I don't have a reason to. Then tell no one but your father and remember, 11 o'clock tomorrow night in my office. Ino bowed happily and quickly left the room with a huge grin on her face. So she had to pretend to be married to Naruto. That wasn't a big deal. He was a good guy and took a lot of effort to make the people around him happier and was always trying to be helpful. She had noticed that in her memories when she was trying to look for hints of evil, and she really didn't think he would take advantage of the situation with his dislike of perverts. As loath as she was to admit it, Sasuke showed more traits in common with a demon than Naruto did, this whole traitor thing notwithstanding. She could deal with sharing a bedroom with him and Hinata, she supposed. Naruto was sure to be a gentleman about it all. Well, he would have if Tsunade didn't plan on forcing him into the life of a lecher with his new wives.